Hey everybody, and welcome back to my channel where today we are doing a full-length, non-spoilery review of Goddess in the Machine by Lora Beth Johnson. So, Goddess in the Machine is the first book in a YA science fiction duology. And in this book we are following our main character of Andra. So Andra was put into a cryogenic sleep so that she could be put into a spaceship and shipped off to a new planet so she could help colonize it. But instead of being woken up after 100 years, she is woken up after 1,000 years. And everybody thinks that she's a goddess, and she's just trying to figure out what is going on and what everybody is expecting of her, as well as trying to ensure that various people are not manipulating her to, their own ends. And the story kind of goes from there. So we are going to start with world building. And one thing that I think was a great choice is that this is not a hard science fiction, which makes sense because Andra is only like 16 years old, so she knows as much about technology as an average 16-year-old. She even mentions like I only know a tiny little bit and only because I took this class about it, which is just a great touch. And so because we're from a 16-year-old perspective, it absolutely makes sense why we would not have hard science explanations. And so the science is a little bit hand wavy at times, but I do think that the author did a pretty good job of ensuring what explanation we got was at least plausible, more or less. So one of the other things that I think that the author did a great job with is really taking the time to figure out how different things would evolve over 1,000 years. So one of the things that we kind of dive into is the tech, because some of the tech that is around when Andra wakes up is really old. Like it was around when she was growing up. And so like how does it work? Does it still work now? If it doesn't, why doesn't it? The new tech and like how people interact with it, and especially given that they don't actually think of it as tech but magic, and trying to figure like what are they referring to when they say angels and all of this really interesting kind of stuff. I think that was done really well. Likewise, I thought the language was done really, really well because over 1,000 years, any language is going to evolve, especially English. I mean, 1,000 years ago from here, we had all English. So it completely makes sense. And I think that the author must really enjoy languages because, again, they clearly thought through how different words would evolve, and there were like rules that basically everything followed, and it made sense, which is actually great because it made it really consistent. So it was really easy to actually figure out the rules and what people were trying to say. So from a reader perspective, that was great. So I just thought that that was fascinating. I think that the only thing that we didn't really get with like the, then and now was we had some about the culture, but only a little bit, and as it relates to our characters, Andra, Jade, and Merritt. There wasn't a ton otherwise, and I thought that that was. I really wanted more. It was okay. It didn't really impact the characters or the world or anything. Like, we didn't need it, but I kind of wanted it. But one thing that I did think was very strange is we didn't get a ton about, like, the setting or the wider world. So we know that it's very dry, very much a desert. But Andrea wakes up in like one city and she's transported to another city, and we never find out anything about the world beyond that. So I was actually sitting here thinking, like, is there only one city in this entire planet? Is that what it is? Like, I don't know. I would think that's silly, but I also just don't know. And so that I thought that that was really strange, and it very much struck me. I felt, I don't know, like I didn't feel quite right about that one. So generally, I do think that the world building itself was done pretty well. Just a couple little things kind of stood out to me. Which brings us to our characters. And our main character is Andra. And I really wanted to like Andra more than I ended up because the thing is, the basics are really interesting, but she's just underdeveloped. And it's that thing where, like, there was a lot of telling and not showing, and even the things that we were told about her didn't seem to have any actual bearing on who she is. So, for example, Andrea self describes as fat. Okay, well, generally speaking, if you're in a society that does not like fat people, or, thinks negatively of fat people, then that's going to that's going to leave a mark on you, on like how you think about yourself and how you imagine other people think about you. And we didn't have that. But if you're in a society that doesn't care about the body size of the individual people, like, we also kind of need something from the author stating that, because that's different than the world we live in, which we didn't get that either. And so it was just kind of that weird thing where, like, we were told something, but it didn't seem to have any kind of an impact on the person. And because it was everything, it was every little thing about Andrea, not just being fat, but like literally everything about her, it just felt very strange. And so when we got to those parts where they're like, Andrea is this kind of person, I was just like, really? I mean, I guess I really haven't seen any evidence of that though. So it was just kind of a very strange thing. I will also say that it's really hard to kind of get next to her, because the first half of the book has a structure where she kind of finds out a small detail that has a huge impact on how she views things, and she freaks out. And then she finds out something else, and she freaks out. And that's just like the first half. And it's just really hard to kind of, connect to her as a character when that's happening. It's really understandable, mind you. It's just, it doesn't make it easy to connect to the character. Our other main character is Jade, and he's supposed to be like this morally gray character, and it was fine. It just, like, all his stuff never really kind of gelled together to feel like a real person is the problem. So it's like, I just, honestly, I just kind of found him to be annoying. Like, we never got his motivations. That was a big thing. So for me, for morally gray characters, I do better with them when I understand what their motivations are. But with Jade, we basically only got like this vague goal of what like his vague goal. That's all. We don't get the specifics, and we don't get why he's doing this really. And so for me, it was just like difficult to get next to him too. And he never really felt like a real character. So again, a little bit underdeveloped. There is a romantic relationship in this, and no chemistry, just absolutely none. And Andrea is like, she knows that she can't trust this person and because this person has been untrustworthy in the past, and she's just like, I probably shouldn't trust him, but I mean, he seems like a good guy. I was just like, oh, I am not here for this. So I didn't love that part either. Our main antagonist is Merritt. He's kind of like the main king, and I do appreciate that there was an attempt made to make him just not just evil, but like an actual real person with like motivations and feelings. But it didn't quite work. It wasn't quite successful. All the other characters, they are pretty unique from each other. I did find them really easy to tell apart, but again, underdeveloped. So with all the characters, it honestly felt just like we had the basics to be really interesting, and the author just never quite delivered on that promise, which is a little disappointing. Let's move to the plot though, and the plot was great. So there was so much twisting and turning in this plot because Andrea is figuring out what is going on. And as she figures it out, so are we. And like, because she's trying to figure out, okay, why wasn't I woken up after, why was I not woken up after 100 years? What's going on? Where is everybody? Like, just trying to figure out everything. And then of course, Jade and Merritt have their own like they're trying to do their own thing, and she's trying to figure out what they're doing and why, and it's really, really interesting. And so there are a ton of reveals throughout this book, and I do think that the author did a great job of pacing out these reveals throughout the book. It just felt really nice. There was always something new to learn. Um, and it wasn't, I guess, and there was differing lengths between when we first get hints about that reveal and when it is actually revealed. So it just felt honestly really, really nice. Like, I don't always love it when we get to the end and then there's like a big monologue that like reveals 7 different things. And we never got that, which was nice. And I will say that like all the reveals felt legit. So we had enough going on in the world. We were given enough information that everything felt like, oh yeah, that could definitely be the thing, right? Like it all made sense to the point where it's just like I got to the end and I thought, I think I know what the end, I think I know what one of the reveals in the ending is. And I thought it was a complete long shot, and I was right, and I was so happy, and it was so good, and it totally made sense. And I just generally really appreciate that. Like having so many reveals and twists and turns, but having it feel very natural for the story. I think that the author did just a great job with that. Which brings us to pacing, writing style, and structure. This is a dual perspective book. The other perspective is Jade. And you should know that Jade's chapters are written in that future-ish language, English language. So, like I said, the author clearly had rules that were stuck to pretty strictly. So it is pretty easy to read his chapters and understand what is going on. But just be forewarned that it's not quite regular English. Now, I did mention before that the first half structure was kind of like Andrea figures a thing out and then freaks out about it. That did slow down the pacing for me personally quite a bit because it was repetitious, right? Like that's really what I remember, because there just wasn't quite enough other things going on. We did get some world building in there, but again, just not quite enough to offset this whole idea of she figures something out and freaks out about it. But after that, like halfway mark, it stops doing that, and it definitely feels a lot faster and just really nicely paced for what was going on with the plot. So overall, I think that the world building was done really well. The plot was excellent. The characters needed some help, but not so bad that they tanked the whole book, which is great. And I just generally think that this was pretty well done. I really enjoyed my time with it, and I ended up giving it 4.25 stars. So if you have read this book, if you have thoughts about what I have said here, leave me a comment down below and let me know. But that is all I have. So if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And until next time, have happy reading, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!